Hi, Women in Society students. I unfortunately can't be in class today because I have to be home with my daughter, Sylvie. So I wanted to move through this slide deck with you so that you are ready to talk about second wave feminism and watch the documentary tomorrow on Friday. So as you know, first wave feminism sort of culminated in 1920 with women getting the right to vote. It wasn't that women weren't active or even that there weren't, feminists or people who believed firmly in the equality of men and women. It's just that things were kind of calming down after such a large fight for the right to vote. So to review, the first wave of feminism started around 1835, or even we could say 1848 with the Seneca Falls Convention, and then it ended in 1920. The objective was for women to get the right to vote. And that goal was achieved. And as you know, it was achieved, and yet it's complicated. Many communities, many women of color, Indigenous women, and men for that matter, did not necessarily get the right to vote in the same way that women did, that white middle-class women did, right? So when we think about the 1920s, we think of the Great Gatsby and this sort of thing, and it invokes the image of the flapper. Daisy from the Great Gatsby was definitely someone we could call a flapper. Women experience liberation very much so during this decade. So as you can see, before the 1920s, women covered their ankles, but as you can see in this photo, the flappers do not. Their ankles, their legs are showing. This was quite provocative for the time. As you can see, many women have what is called the bob haircut. They cut their hair shorts and start wearing hats, and things like that. They're drinking in public and maybe even smoking in public. They are wearing pants instead of just skirts and dresses. And as you can see, this is a very androgynous look. Almost for the times that would be considered masculine, right? So women are really, at least, physically and with fashion, really experimenting with womanhood and these traditional notions of what womanhood and women are supposed to look like and do in society. For example, riding bikes, another new thing for women to be doing. Then we have the World Wars, and as you saw during World War I, women sort of sidelined their fight for the right to vote and decided that they needed to participate in the war effort and do whatever they could to be patriotic and to support the efforts of the war. The Second World War was the same thing. Women were called to support the nation, to support the men off fighting in other countries. This is where we get the classic image of Rosie the Riveter. This woman here who's saying we can do it, she was considered Rosie the Riveter. And what women were called to do, because all of the men were off at war, they were called into the factories to weld, to do mechanical things like build airplanes and anything else that needed to be shipped off to war. So women loved it. They were in the factories and they loved working. For pretty much, for middle-class white women, essentially, this is the first time that they're leaving the home and entering the workforce in mass amounts. So this is a big deal. Women also play baseball during this time because, again, the men are off at war, and so baseball becomes feminized during this time. There's a great movie called A League of Their Own, all about the women who played baseball during World War II. As you can see, though, of course, baseball would not be baseball for women if it didn't involve short skirts. After the World War II ended, there was sort of this idea that women needed to go back home. Okay, thanks, you did what we needed you to do. The men are back. And war is a very tragic and hard time, too. And so prosperity and happiness was very much needed, right? So women are sort of drawn back home, and they re-enter what was known as the cult of domesticity, where women are told, and it is reinforced, that to be a true woman, a woman needs to be a mother and work inside the home and care for her husband and those types of things. And so if you look here, this slide really explains what is meant by the cult of domesticity, or what is also called the cult of true womanhood. It comes from the 19th century, but this philosophy took the position that there were separate spheres that regulated gender roles in America. The philosophy was largely accepted by the middle and upper classes. Fundamentally, the cult held that a woman's place was in the home, where her superior virtue was to create a strong, morally uplifting environment for her children and husband. So that was a 19th century idea that, again, had popularity in the 1950s, so that it was like after the war we wanted to reestablish life as we knew it, so to speak. Perhaps something like this happens after the pandemic. I don't know. We'll see, class. Also, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that, again, this is largely white middle-class women. Women of color and women living in the working class poor, and poverty, had a different experience. They were always working. I don't think we could say they had a choice whether or not to not work. So a woman named Betty Friedan, right here, Betty Friedan, notices that many of her college-educated friends living in suburbia just don't seem as happy as they should be. They have the house, they have the white picket fence, they have the husband, they have the 2.5 kids, and yet something seems to be deeply lacking from their identity, from their experience, and it's almost like these women are experiencing a deep depression in their lives. So, with the publication of this book called The Feminine Mystique, it's sort of like second wave feminism, a second wave of consciousness or drive towards equality or awakening that that men and women are drastically not equal happens. And so the readings that you did last night about Title IX fit into this era. So, Title IX, as you know, for my generation, it was heavily known as, oh, that's the Title IX is what gave women the right to play sports. So it's really, really, really known for that aspect of it. And yes, it's a huge aspect of it. And as we know from reading A Day Without Feminism or whatever, girls were allowed to play half-court basketball, and not many high schools had varsity sports for girls beyond cheerleading. So it was a big deal for Title IX, but it also did a lot more than that. This slide here has 9 things you need to know about Title IX. And I suppose the one that I want to highlight for you is number 8. In cases of sexual violence, schools are prohibited from encouraging or allowing mediation rather than a formal hearing of the complaints. So you read an article called The Legacy of Campus Rape, and I had you read that because Title IX is really a huge part of how, specifically today, even still in the 21st century, women and on college campuses are allowed to combat and have grounds for saying, this is what happened to me. Rape happened to me, and it is your fault at the university level for not protecting me, because there is this thing called Title IX that says I am allowed an education without a hostile environment. So I think that it is really worth knowing what Title IX is as you are high school students preparing in a year or two to start your college education. So as you know, there were some questions, and I told you you did not have to answer these, but because I cannot be in class with you, I would really like you to answer these questions. So the impact of Title IX, questions, and this one is more like the history of Title IX and its creation, and then more specifically the application of Title IX in the second article, which is the legacy of campus rape. And if you are interested, Title IX has really been the subject of quite a bit the past couple years. Betsy DeVos in particular has been someone who has wanted to revisit Title IX and make some modifications. Some believe the modifications are downright negatively impacting what Title IX is supposed to be doing, while others see that her changes are beneficial for universities and the parties involved in a sexual assault accusation that happens on a college campus. So if you'd like to, and you have the time in class, I encourage you to look this up and think about what's going on. You know, this Title IX is something that got passed in the 70s, but it's still very much a topic of discussion and a topic and something that is right here, right now, changing as we speak. So see what's going on with Betsy DeVos, and then you can we can talk about it next time we see each other too. And I think that's the conclusion of this PowerPoint. Sorry it's getting long, but I also would really like you to send me an email and let me know your thoughts on the articles that you read for Title IX. Just a quick email just saying, this is what I learned by reading those articles. Something as small as 5 sentences or something as long as, you know, a page worth of info. Doesn't matter to me. I'm missing the discussion with you, and I love our discussions. So if you write me an email, then maybe I'll have time tomorrow evening to write you back, and we can kind of have a little tiny discussion that way. So have a great class and have a great afternoon, students. And I look forward to seeing you next week after Labor Day. Tomorrow, Friday, you'll be watching a documentary all about second wave feminism. Okay? So enjoy the documentary tomorrow. And again, I look forward to discussing all that is second wave feminism with you when we get back to school after Labor Day. Bye now.